something without wanting love bears heavy on my mind. Then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day. When the day that lies ahead of me seems impossible to face, when someone else instead of me always seems to know the way, then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day.
Good morning. Oh, so Brian is sitting in as the engineer this morning. I'm not sitting behind the big chairs I normally would do. And you hear lovely day in the background because it is a lovely day. It's cold AF. But I'm talking this morning, and I'm excited to be talking. I'm talking to Greg Yolen. I'm going to call him in about 5 minutes. He is executive producer of the new film, The Good Liar, starring the fabulous Helen Mirren and the dashing Ian McKellen. So I met Greg Yolen at his famous mother, who is legendary in Connecticut and Rhode Island, and pretty much around the country for legislative work that she has done for Planned Parenthood. So she was retiring, and so I met him and got to know him a little bit and had a great conversation. He's very funny and quite charming. So anyway, we've been back and forth. We're Facebook friends. We've been back and forth chatting offline, and then he just like, I got this film coming out. And I was like, what film? And he told me about this little film he had going out. And let me tell you something. I am a huge fan of Helen Mirren. Like, I know John Legend is on the cover of People's Most Sexiest Man Alive, but really, Helen Mirren ought to be on the cover as the sexiest person alive. Honest to God, hands down. So I'm going to tell Greg, you might want to call People Magazine, like bump little boy off the page and put Helen Mirren. Helen Mirren has got to be the sexiest person alive. So anyway, this film, it looks like a caper. You know what I mean by a caper? It's got good dialogue. It's got a great storyline. So it's a 2019 American thriller film, and it's a novel by Nicholas Searle, and it stars Ian McKellen as a career con artist, confidence man, who meets a wealthy widow, Helen Mirren, online and begins to plan how to steal her fortune. You already know. Helen Mirren ain't going to be in no film where she's going to be anybody's fool. So I imagine that Ian McKellen has his hands full with trying to steal money from Helen Mirren's character, and it ain't happening. If anything, I bet you she is stealing money from him. So anyway, let me tell you who's in this cast. So Helen Mirren is Betty McLeish. Ian McKellen is Roy Courtney. Russell Tovey is Stephen. Jim Carter is Vincent. Mark Lewis Jones as Bryn. Celine Buckins as Annalise. And Laurie Davison as Hans Taub. So I think it's released Friday. I think it hits the big screens Friday. And it's already been out in the UK because I think Greg was in the UK we were talking back and forth. But he's back stateside now. But it opens Friday on the 15th, and I believe it's going to be at the Criterion downtown. So I know his mama is gathering folks to go see it on Friday. So if y'all around, you might want to go see it. and it'll make a little money, I suspect. And it's got a nice approval rating over there on Rotten Tomatoes. If you don't follow Rotten Tomatoes, I can't help you. So just go follow Rotten Tomatoes and read what they talk about when they films are released. So it's got some good reviews. So I'm gonna see it only because I love both of them and I love a good caper. No, I really do. I love a good caper. So it'd be nice to sort of you know what, Brian, I can't hear myself in my headsets. I don't know what that is. I don't know if you could pull that up a little bit or studio or something. So anyway, I got them all pulled up all the way. So maybe you want to check the studio. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Better. Because you know, if you can't hear yourself, you can't modulate your voice. As you know, Brian, I'm loud as all get out. I'll be all over the place. So anyway, I'm looking forward to having this great conversation with the young Mr. Yolen, and to talk about his life in film and his life overall, and what his expectations for this film. And you know, I'm interested in how films like this measure their success, because we hear so much about the Marvel universe and those big action, big box films, and those they're measured by money. How do you measure like films like this? That's not gonna make 700 million thousand 8 gazillion trillion billion jillion dollars, but people will dig. Like, how do you measure that? So I'm interested in that. So yeah. So if you want to call him, see if he's around, and we'll happily have a good conversation.
Hello.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. How are you?
This is Babz Rawls Ivy.
Hi, Babz Rawls Ivy. It's Greg Yolen.
I know, you're right on air. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited for this new film.
Thank you. Me too. Excited and exhausted, and I feel like I'm sending my kid off to college, and it's a bit of empty nest syndrome over here.
Well, it's out in the UK. How are they digging it over there?
They're really liking it. I have to say the response has been great, and we are, I think, the first film in, I want to say, like 1,000 years to actually beat Joker, which is no small feat.
Whoa!
Now we didn't beat it in the box office over the weekend because you have a lot of, I think, young Joker fans going to see it for the seventh or eighth time. But we beat it on Monday, and I think that hopefully we're just hoping that people are really going to show up, and it's going to get some good word of mouth, particularly with older audiences. It's a film that we shot and made in the UK. It has a really, I think, great authentic London flavor, and I say that in my American accent, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But but the hope is that people sort of see it and get behind it and spread the word.
Listen, I said earlier before you got on, Helen Mirren is the sexiest woman alive. I don't know why John Legend is on the People's cover. It ought to be Helen Mirren.
She makes us all look bad. I'll put it that way. She's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Anything that
and pretty talented too, not just sexy, but also
she's hella talented. I mean, I saw her as the Queen, and I was dumbfounded by the way she made me believe. Like, I thought she was a better Queen than the Queen. I don't know how the Queen will feel about that, but
I totally agree with you. Yeah, she's played like all the queens now. She's got another queen. She's Catherine the Great now. She's played Elizabeth. She's probably played Victoria at some point.
I think she could be Cleopatra if we was going that way again.
That's right. That gets into a representation conversation that that's a little scary, but she could probably nail the role.
Let's be honest. And you've got the dashing Ian McKellen, who is quite handsome, I must say.
He is wonderful, and I've had the opportunity to work with him several times now. He's really an incredibly smart, well, they both are, but just an incredibly brilliant, methodical actor. And I don't mean that he's method in the sense that he shows up and he is the character, like like Marlon Brando used to do or anything. He's not that. He's methodical in that, like, when you watch an Ian McKellen performance, every blink, every scratch of his nose is absolutely planned out, and he does it on every single take. It's something to watch where you're just like you're watching math, and he is sort of in that way a little bit opposite the Helen, and again, really the greatest pleasure of getting to do my job especially on this film, is that you just kind of get to be there in the room, or at least watching the monitor as these incredible actors are doing their work. And she approaches it in a very different way. She's really sort of like, for her, it's all about, like, I know the words, like, I want to go, I want to be fresh, I want to find it, I want to have some sort of I wouldn't say it's improvisational at all, but it just stems from a place of, like, instinct for her, and she gets to show up and just be Helen Mirren and nail it. And so he approaches it from this, like, every tiny micro shift is planned out, and she really pushes him and he pushes her, and I think what you get in the film is a really great chemistry between them.
So how did you decide to do this film? Like, how do you pick a film out of all the films that you could be doing? You picked this one with a decidedly older cast, or stars of this cast, which which is neither here nor there in terms of talent. But it's not a Marvel film. It's not a one of these slick whatever. This is an old school kind of caper kind of thing. How do you decide that this is what you want to sign on to do?
There are a lot of answers to the question, and the first thing I'll say, just being as real as I can in the film industry, I feel like if I come on Babz's show, I've got to go deep. I've got to get really real. Is that at a certain point, it's not all up to you. It's not simply about, like, I want to do this film, I point at it, and now we're going to go do it. You find yourself in situations where the people who are financing a film, in this case Warner Brothers, New Line, and Braun, which is a Canadian film financier, they sort of run their numbers, and they decide that something has the ability to work at the box office or not. And so I've been involved with projects that I really want to make, and they haven't happened. So to say, like, I want to do it isn't the full picture. But in this case, this was a novel that I read, and I found it totally randomly online. I was just sort of poking around looking for good material. I've been working with this director, Bill Condon, writer-director, for a number of years now. He won the Academy Award for writing a film called Gods and Monsters, which was his first time collaborating with Ian McKellen. He did Kinsey and Dreamgirls, and we did Beauty and the Beast together, and several others. And I sent it to him just because we had sort of been talking about, really looking for something in the vein of a Hitchcock film. That was a thing that he had always wanted to do. He's, that was his first love as a young film goer. And so when I read this novel, I thought, well, this could be it. And moreover, it could have a great, role for Ian McKellen, which is, who is a good friend of Bill's. And so I sent it to him as he was getting on a transatlantic flight to London from New York. And by the time he landed, I had an email in my inbox saying, "This is a movie. We gotta jump on this." And as soon as he expressed his interest, we quickly, reached out to Ian, to McKellen, who, is the loveliest, but also just sort of makes it easy because he and Bill have such a long-standing friendship and great working relationship and a trust. And he just sort of said, "Well, if you say it's good, then I'll do it." And from there, it was a pretty quick process of getting it together with Warner Brothers, who had actually just bought the rights to the novel. So we sort of found out that they had bought the rights, and we just called them up and said, "Hey, are you doing anything with this? Do you have plans? Because if not, we can bring you Ian McKellen and Bill Condon and get a script written." And they went for it. And so we brought in our collaborator Jeff Hatcher, who is a terrific screenwriter. Wrote the film Mr. Holmes that we did a few years ago, also with Ian McKellen playing a very, very old Sherlock Holmes in some pretty cool makeup. And we started working on it, and it's a really kind of unique story in that, when you talk about the lifespan of developing a movie and bringing it from the moment that someone like me, reads a novel, say, or has an idea, to the moment that it's actually on screen, it's usually like years and years and years.
That's what I was gonna, because it sounds like this went pretty quickly.
It did. It went really quickly. I mean, it went slowly until it went quickly. But when it went quickly, it went really quickly, because there was a moment where, Ian, who is the most energetic, impossibly energetic 80-year-old man you've ever met, he had a window in his schedule before he went on this nationwide tour in England to celebrate his 80th birthday, where he played every single theater. He did a one-man show in every theater he'd ever performed in England.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and he's still doing it, by the way. He's now doing it in the West End in London. He did it. He was here last week for press on this. He did one night on Broadway, and so he had a window before that started, and Helen Mirren had a window, and it was just sort of one of those things where we were able to say to the studio, listen, it's now or never. And they ultimately said, okay, go make your movie. But by the time they did, we had to make it real fast, which was a fun challenge.
So how do you measure success with a film like this? Like, the Marvel universe seems to be the status with these big blockbuster box movies, right? They thousands of trillions of gazillion dollars. But a film like that is not going to catapult to that kind of status, or maybe it might. But how do you measure success on top of box office, and what are the other metrics that you would use to sort of say, all right, we made this was good?
Yeah, we did it. Well, I personally, I think if this film makes any less than $1 billion, I'll be very disappointed. So I guess that's my answer. It just has to make $1 billion. It's a good question, and it's a good question in light of sort of the larger discussions right now about not only the sort of Scorsese versus Marvel thing, which has been a hot button issue the past few weeks.
I saw Martin Scorsese in a conversation with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and the other person that's in the film, and he talked about how hard it was. People turned this film down, this new film that he has out, and people turned it down because it required some technology that no one wanted to invest in. And I thought, if Martin Scorsese could get a damn film made, who could get a film made?
Well, it's really true. And that is the real big challenge here. And in some respects, I think The Good Liar, and I hope it does succeed at the box office. I hope it finds an audience. And the way I'd like to think of it is, it's the movie that hopefully, if you're home with your family over Thanksgiving, it's a film weirdly that everyone can agree on. It's not a soft movie that you have to take your mom and dad to. This movie has some real edge to it, even though it sort of is deceptively about two older people meeting online. It goes to some pretty, I think, tough, dark places, and has some twists and some shocks, which are really kind of out there in a good way, I hope. So I think it's hopefully a movie that you go see with your whole family, although not the kids because it's rated R. But yeah, I mean, for us, this was a film where we feel like if it had come, if we'd even been 6 months later with it, it might have been a tougher proposition to get the studio to agree to. The landscape in film specifically is shifting so quickly. In terms of what studios and film financiers are willing to put up money for. And it's all because of the streamers and that aspect of it. That, the Netflixes and the HBO Maxes and the Disney Pluses and all these things that are able to come in and finance films for at a certain level and also not spend much on marketing. I mean, that's the thing that Netflix does not do, when you're making a film with Netflix. But in the case of Martin Scorsese, then, he had a film that, he'd been trying to get made for years. And yes, it involves this extensive digital de-aging technology on its leads, which means that for practically every shot in that film, you're spending thousands of dollars on top of just shooting it and lighting it, and all the things that come with actually producing it on the day you make it. You're adding thousands of dollars to every frame of that film because of this, this rendering technology that you have to do. And ultimately, he couldn't get it made by a studio, so he went to Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And Netflix, from what I understand, gave him more than he was even asking for. They sort of came in and they said, yeah, we'll absolutely do it. In fact, have a little extra, because we really want to step in, and I think they really saw this as an opportunity to work with a great filmmaker and sort of become more like a film studio as opposed to a streamer. So these things are all sort of converging and shifting, and which is a very long-winded way of saying that, I think The Good Liar is a more old-fashioned type of studio film. Really sort of, you used to get it a lot more than you do now. A good adult drama thriller that appeals maybe not to every single person, like a Marvel movie where that's what they call a quote-unquote 4-quadrant film. So you have young females, young males, older females, older males, the 4 quadrants. This is a film that is probably, mostly targeted to older audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And, so in terms of measuring the success of it, it really is like, I hope it does well at the box office, but I hope that it has a long life beyond that. I think this is hopefully the type of film that people are going to just sort of, seek out and find, whether it's on streaming or home video or what have you. And whether you see it in the theater or you see it at home, I think it's full of pleasure.
So does this help? So if however way you decide success, when you go to do your next project, do you say, "Oh, look at The Good Liar. Look at Beauty and the Beast"? Are you dependent on whatever the last thing you've done to project you to the next thing?
Yes and no. Yeah, I mean, the general wisdom is like, yeah, you're only as good as your last picture. But the truth of the matter is that, given sort of what I was saying, the long gestation time of so many projects, and just how many years it takes to get a script together and then attach cast and get people to give you the money not only to develop it but then to go put it into production. Given the amount of time that all takes, really it's more like a game of chess or something like that, where in my case I have several projects that kind of regardless of the success of Good Liar, I hope could all move into a various sort of queue of what comes next. So it's not exactly just the last one. How'd the last one do? It's more like where you are in the process on various fronts. So in this case, it's possible that the next thing I go and do is with Disney, and yet The Good Liar has nothing to do with Disney. The Good Liar was sort of the palate cleanser after doing Beauty and the Beast for 3 years, and now potentially going back and doing a big, fun original musical with Disney, which feels like a palate cleanser after this.
Wow. So does it excite you to know that there are other ways to get a film out to market other than the traditional movie sites? Like, does the influence of a Netflix excite you? Does it give you pause? Do you like, oh Lord, everybody's gonna go down this road?
Well, I've never done a movie at Netflix, so I guess I have to be very very reverential to them right now. Yes, I love Netflix. I love everything they do. I watch it all of it, and they're brilliant. It really is like, Yes, I think the short answer is yes. It's an exciting time to be, I think, certainly a filmmaker starting out who is able to, you know, who's able to make a film at a price and get more eyeballs onto it than ever before. That is the definite upside of a Netflix or a streaming situation where instead of 15 years ago, where if you made a really good independent film, if you made if you're Peter Sollett and made Raising Victor Vargas or something like that, you better hope that people are showing up at the Angelica Theater to see it. And if not, that if they don't, and after it's out of the theater, you better hope that people are sort of are conversant enough in indie film that they know to seek this out on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about a certain, maxing out a certain number of people who might see a film like that. But in the age of Netflix, it's as simple as some person sitting on their couch and they pull up films you might like, and there it is. And that is kind of, I think, for most filmmakers, I would venture to say, the goal is that you want your work to be seen, just period. I think the flip side of it is that, I'll give you an example. Like I heard 6-8 months ago, something like that, someone said, "Oh, have you seen this film on Netflix called Caliber?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "No, what's that?" And they go, "Oh, it's really good." Now I go on Netflix and I search for Caliber, and there it is, and it's a really dark, excellent little, I think, Scottish murder crime thriller film. Really good. Not dissimilar, really, to The Good Liar in some ways. And it was one of those things where I watched it and I really enjoyed it, and I thought, you know what? I never ever would have heard about this film. And because A, there's no marketing for it. B, it's not in movie theaters, so I wouldn't have seen it in movie theaters. C, somehow the algorithm that they use at Netflix for films you might like did not bring this up for me. It
Hmm.
wasn't there for me, even though I liked it tremendously. Um, and then D, if you sell your film to Netflix, if you're the filmmakers of Caliber, for instance, and you sell your film to Netflix, um, there's no DVD release of it. There's no physical media ever. It lives on Netflix until they don't want it to live on Netflix. Although in theory it always stays up there. But there are definite sort of downsides, which is that you're pulling out the traditional means by which people would have found a film like that before. And to be honest, it was a fluke that I found it.
Mm.
It was just because someone said, "Oh, have you heard about this movie?" Um,
But do you think
and
that Netflix is going to have to? I mean, how long can they go on with that sort of model, right? Because the goal is to have people see films.
Yeah, I think I think that they probably view themselves as absolutely doing right by people and filmmakers. Because as I said, I do think more people are watching, films that they might not have watched. Um, in terms of how long the Netflix current model is sustainable, it's unclear. I think it's one of the big questions that sort of everyone right now in the film industry is asking,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously this is the moment where now, as of yesterday, Disney is launching their streaming service, and then you're going to have, in the space of a couple months, you're going to have HBO Max, and you're going to have more and more streamers. And the question is, does Netflix sort of become just another channel? Is this what is going to replace cable TV in the future, essentially?
Mm.
That instead of having the premium channels that you watch on cable, you're going to have your apps. And Netflix has been making, has made hundreds of films. Their output is unlike anything you've ever seen. And really the question is, how long can that last? Can it last?
And not just movies. I mean, series. You could watch a whole. They put out a whole series. Like they just put the whole thing out, and you just watch at your own pace. Which I didn't never thought I would enjoy that, but binging is a thing.
Yeah,
it's a
that's
real
right.
it's a
Yeah,
real thing. So I
it's
just
good.
find
Yes,
it
play
interesting.
to the addictive personalities of people, and you can never lose.
So
Yeah, it's true. But listen, the downside to a Netflix is that, and I say this from a selfish perspective, is that um, you know, we finished this film in the spring, and Warner Brothers decided that they wanted to open it on November 15th. That's Friday in the U.S., and we were like, that's pretty good. That's a good date. And then, 3 weeks ago, Netflix announced that, that same weekend we're going to release The Crown season 3.
Oh.
And at that point, it's like, well, there's nothing to be done. We're opening this movie, and we're hoping that in this marketplace that people don't go, well, do I go out to the movie theater to see this new movie, or do I stay at home and binge watch The Crown? So there is definitely a sort of, it's not exactly a totally friendly relationship between films and Netflix right now. They sort of want, I think, to, in some ways, undermine traditional theatrical moviegoing. And in that sense, it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to watch The Irishman at home, and yet, I hope that people also go see my movie in the theater.
I think
so
people will go see it.
I'm a contradiction.
I think people will go see the movie in the theater. I
hope so, because it's a great movie to see with a crowd. It's there are moments in that I've gotten to see with audiences, and we had a terrific premiere in New York last week, and it's really fun to watch these sort of twists unfold and hear the audience reaction.
So how much involvement do you get to have in terms of, when you get into a film? I mean, do you have some say in who's in the film? Do you have some say in where the film is shot? I mean, how much say do you get to have, or control, or not control, over the actual making of the film?
Depends on the film. Depends on the requirements of the film. Sometimes it's just obvious that you're going to have to do certain things certain ways. Sometimes you have to. I'll give you an example. It's like sometimes you read a script and you say, well, we obviously have to build this house that this scene takes place in, or that this film these multiple scenes take place, and we have to build it because we have to do X, Y, Z. You have to be able to move the camera here. You have to be able to do this, and you just get a sense of like what it's asking for immediately. And then there are, on the flip side, there are films that, like with Good Liar, that was a film that we did at a real price, at a low price, certainly for a studio film. And, we wanted to shoot as much on location as possible, because that's generally speaking less expensive. And also it has some, benefits in terms of feeling authentic, as I said, to sort of time and place in London. So these things sometimes just present themselves as decisions that have to be made, And I think ideally as a producer, you're letting the film tell you what it should be, and you're just doing that. But in terms of the, my influence, I mean, it's 100%. I do it all. Everything comes down to me. The buck stops here. No one dares. No, it's a total collaboration. I mean, that's what's fun about it. That's what's addictive about it, is that you put together basically a team, and you talk things through, you figure things out, and it's every day is a new sort of puzzle to be figured out. And there are, if you're lucky, you get really smart people on your team who are designers and location scouts, and they come and they have great ideas, and then those ideas feed into the script, and then the script feeds back to the actors, and then the actors have ideas, and then those ideas, everything starts feeding on itself. And when you have a great experience, and I would say like Beauty and the Beast was a great experience in that way. Like we just had incredible designers and costumers and stuff, and those ideas their ideas really went into the film, and I think enriched it. But when you're figuring that stuff out, hopefully you're doing it with everybody.
So when you work with people, do you get to say when you go to your next project, oh, I think Babz would be good in this. She would be good working on this film.
I think you would be good in it, Babz.
I'm just using me as an example. I'm just saying. So, like, do you think about that? Do you think about all the people that you work with when you start assembling a team for the next project?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's, when you find someone that you can really, that you really have a great shorthand with, and that you really love, and you love what they do, you want to cling to those people. And the phrase that we use in the industry is circus family, right? It's like the people that you when you're there on set and you're working long days from pre-dawn to the middle of the night, as often happens. These are people that you bond with a lot. This is your home away from home, because you're not home very much. And so, finding and being lucky enough to find people that you really adore and you trust is one of the pleasures of doing what I get to do.
So, are you working on the next thing?
Always working, always hustling, Babz, just like you. We're always hustling.
So tell me, what is the dream film? Like, if there's any film out there that has to be made, what is the dream film for you? Like, you're like, man, if I could just have all the money that I need and access to all the actors, what is that piece of work that you just like, you know what, I have to go down swinging with this thing?
This is going to be my last stand. It's called The Good Liar, and it's in theaters on Friday, November 5th. And it may be the last time I ever work.
Oh, that is so not true.
No, I hope not. I hope y'all like it. I'll give you an example. I wouldn't say this is exactly an answer to your question, but this is something that I'm working on right now, and I'm really excited about, and I would say I'm really passionate about. Which is not necessarily a film. I think that right now, a lot of conversations in the quote golden age of peak television, or whatever they call it, a lot of conversations quickly, when you find a story that's just amazing and is dying to be told, which I think is what you're talking about. The question is like, well, is it a movie or is it a TV show?
Oh, that's a good point.
Is it a limited series? What is it? Maybe it's longer. Maybe you could, instead of 2 hours, maybe you could do 10 hours. And sometimes you'll see a television series that is like, wow, that was amazing. Like I thought Escape at Dannemora, earlier in the year, that with the Ben Stiller show that he did with Benicio del Toro. Was incredible, about the prison break in upstate New York. Like, that was a perfect example of something that was like, yeah, you could have done it in 2 hours, but I'm glad you did it in 7 hours. And so for me, the project that right now I'm really excited about and excited to get off the phone in 20 minutes to dive into this is about impeachment. And specifically, it is about the impeachment, the first impeachment in our nation's history of a sitting U.S. president, which was of President Andrew Johnson.
Yes.
Who was the guy who succeeded Lincoln and was a real racist bastard. And this, there is I've been sort of flirting with the idea of trying to do a version of his story and the story of his takedown, which is an unbelievable dramatic story, and also obviously relevant for many reasons right now. But then this book was written, I think, also in the sort of zeitgeist of what's happening, called The Impeachers, by a woman named Brenda Wineapple. And it came out a few months ago. It's a really terrific read. And I read it, and I said, well, this is it. This is basically exactly what this, should be. So have optioned the novel, or not novel, but optioned the book, and we're trying to attach a writer to it right now, and then hopefully going to go sell it, and then hopefully, in 10 years you'll see it on your television screen, or on some screen.
That sounds like a good example of some kind of script, a series. Like the people could follow along from the beginning to, you know what I mean? Like, it's not wrapped up in 2 hours.
No, it shouldn't be. I think for this one, it is one of those things where it's like, no, this is asking for, again, in the idea that the thing tells you what it wants to be. I think this wants to be longer. I think it's an incredible saga, and for me, it's sort of hitting the nail on the head in terms of what our, the conversations we're having nationally right now about race and identity and white supremacy. All this stuff really, I think, goes back to conversations that we punted on as a country at a key moment, and this was the moment. We don't talk about this moment. We don't talk about Reconstruction enough, and how we sort of failed and this drama with Andrew Johnson and that ultimately led to his impeachment on for many reasons, but for disgracing the office of the president of the United States. I feel like this is like we're still having these conversations every single day, and this could be a great piece of that conversation for all the people who love who are MSNBC junkies. Here's something to give you a little context and a little escapism, but not too far. It's not really escapism. You still get to think about all the same stuff. But
now, do you go see films? Because I just saw Harriet, which I loved. I just loved it for a lot of reasons. Because it just looked beautiful. I love that it wasn't like slavery porn.
Right.
And that there was a affirming message in the end. I thought that was amazing.
I haven't seen Harriet. I'm dying to see Harriet. I've heard great things. You are not alone. And by the way, that's an example of a film that has really performed. That has found an audience, and I think people within the film industry were really surprised by how quickly it turned into something that was like, oh, this movie, people wanted this movie. I think they've wanted it for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I do try to go see movies as much as possible, which with a 6-year-old kid is sometimes not the movie that I would personally choose, or perhaps I don't get to go at all.
Wow.
But like for instance, I'm the guy who still hasn't seen the Tarantino film, so don't even ask me about that.
Oh!
Don't even ask me what I thought about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But you've seen Frozen.
I'll see the hell out of Frozen. Yeah, absolutely.
You gotta
but then
Frozen.
when you're in the Producers Guild, they do this awful thing at the end of the year where, because you have to vote on awards, they send you these DVDs of all the movies, which is great. But then you really have no excuse. Then you're like, well, I'm not going to go out and see this movie. I can just put on this DVD copy of it here. So it's really like I probably won't set foot in a movie theater for the rest of the year, except to sneak into the back of The Good Liar opening November 15th.
Well, you know what? There's a group of folks going to see it Friday under your mother's invitation.
Yes.
I mean, your mother's reach is vast and wide. So they're going to be taking over the theater on Friday, and
she's calling in a career's worth of favors.
People will do anything for your mother, right? Because she walks on water.
It's true. She's just burning all that capital. 40 years in Connecticut politics, and she's like, if you don't show up on Friday night to see The Good Liar, you're dead to me.
That's it. Hey, listen, that's a good mother.
It is. Oh, she's the best.
That's a good mother. That's good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your very, very busy schedule. I'm excited to see this film. I'm excited about your success, and I'll let you know if I like it or not. Which I already like it because it has Helen Mirren. She can do no wrong.
I need you to be honest with me. I'm counting on that.
Oh no, I love Helen Mirren. Listen, she can do no wrong. Seriously.
Well, you're right about that. She doesn't do any wrong in this movie. I'll tell you that. I think that if you're looking for a Helen Mirren fix, you can mainline this movie for sure. And Ian McKellen makes a terrific villain, which he doesn't get to play a lot of. He's gotten a lot of twinkly Gandalf-y stuff.
Yes.
And he's rightly beloved, but we make him into a nasty villain.
Thank you, Greg Yolen. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Babz. I appreciate you too. It's great talking.
Great talking to you. Here's to your success.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Brian Slattery. That was a good conversation.
When someone else instead of me always seems to know the way, then I look at you and the world's all right with me. ask me to swing by. It's the